Welcome to This Explainer. Look, today we're not just throwing isolated health tips or random psychological theories at you. We are diving straight into the hidden biological architecture that runs right beneath your conscious awareness. We're talking about an invisible operating system that literally governs how you heal, how you age, the architecture of your sleep, and honestly, how you feel right this very second. Let's get right into it. So what invisible biological forces are actually shaping the quality of your life every single day? It's the ultimate question, right? Usually we treat things like poor sleep, digestive issues, a bit of anxiety, or even chronic pain as completely isolated problems. But what if they aren't? What if there's a single, invisible biological force dictating everything from your cellular inflammation to your emotional resilience? To really understand this system, we have to look at how our bodies process the world, and more importantly, how they physically encode our past. Now, you've probably heard Dr. Bessel van der Kolk's famous quote, "The body keeps the score." It's a great line, but here's the thing. It is not just a poetic metaphor. It's a literal, physiological reality. Your biology is this deeply, deeply interconnected web. Stressful or traumatic memories, they aren't just filed away in some mental cabinet in your mind. They actually alter your epigenetic expression, they shift your hormonal baselines, and they rewire your nervous system. And the crazy part is, scientists have known this was happening for a really long time. Way back after the First World War, a psychiatrist named Abram Gardner was studying shell shock in soldiers, and he realized something profound. The core of their trauma wasn't just a mental loop playing in their heads. It was a physioneurosis, meaning it was rooted deeply in the physical body itself. Right around that same time, Wilhelm Reich actually coined the term muscular armor. He noticed that when people were emotionally overwhelmed, it literally resulted in physical rigidity in very specific muscle groups. The trauma was locking itself into the body's physical structure. It was becoming the trauma. But figuring out how to treat it, well, that opened up a pretty terrifying paradox. Which brings us to a total paradigm-shattering discovery made by Dr. Joseph Walb after World War II. He was rigorously documenting patients who were trying to process their trauma through traditional talking cares, and he found something really unexpected. Talking about it was actively harmful in many cases. Just recounting the memories intensified the psychological distress. It's a phenomenon we now call re-traumatization. The traditional loop of talk therapy was often failing because, simply put, the thinking part of your brain, the neocortex, couldn't fix what was physically trapped in the body. And to understand why that happens, we have to take a look at our evolution. Section 1. Evolution's Biological Survival Hierarchy. To crack the code of this hidden operating system, we rely on Stephen Porges' groundbreaking polyvagal theory, which essentially maps out our autonomic nervous system. And it all starts with a concept called neuroception. Before your conscious brain even registers that you've walked into a room or heard a loud sound, your nervous system is already running a continuous, totally subconscious scan for risk and safety. Based on that background scan, your biology is making split-second survival decisions that immediately alter your heart rate, your digestion, and even your cellular state, all before you even have a single conscious thought. And when that neuroception detects danger, we operate on a very predictable biological hierarchy. At the very top, in what's called the ventral vagal state, we feel safe. This is where the absolute magic of human flourishing happens, right? Social connection, deep restorative sleep, cellular repair. But if we're under threat, that biological brake comes right off, and we drop down to an older circuit, the sympathetic nervous system. That's your classic fight or flight, pumping out cortisol and adrenaline. And if we can't fight and we can't escape, we drop even further down to the oldest unmyelinated circuit, the dorsal vagal state. This is freeze, metabolic shutdown, and dissociation. The absolutely crucial point here is understanding how this hierarchy maps onto the actual physical structure of your brain. Paul MacLean's triune brain model shows us that under severe threat, the highly evolved neocortex, the part of you that uses language, logic, and abstract thought, goes completely offline. Boom, shut down. The stressful experience entirely bypasses those verbal semantic networks. Instead, it gets encoded in the older, deeper mammalian and reptilian brain structures. So it's not stored as a story you can just sit down and tell someone. It's stored as a procedural, physical habit, a muscular bracing, an autonomic alarm bell that just keeps ringing. Now, out in the wild, animals transition through these biological states seamlessly. Dr. Peter Levine observed that an animal escaping a predator will literally physically shake, discharging all that massive surge of survival energy, and then just go right back to a calm state of cellular repair like nothing happened. But humans, we don't do that. We suppress it. We sit perfectly still and try to rationalize our way out of it. And because we never complete that biological cycle, all that intense survival energy remains completely bound within our neuromuscular system. It sits there, silently driving chronic inflammation and totally disrupting our healthy aging processes. Section 2. Where the body stores stress. So if this energy is physically trapped in our tissues, how exactly does a suppressed emotion become a chronic physical illness? Or how does it derail your longevity? Well, the answer lies in this absolutely astonishing number: 80%. The vagus nerve, which is basically the biological superhighway connecting your brain to your internal organs, is highly asymmetrical. 80% of its nerve fibers are afferent. That means 80% of the signals are traveling from the body up to the brain. Think about that for a second. If your organs are holding on to trapped survival energy, they are screaming danger up to your brainstem 24 hours a day, driving accelerated aging and cognitive decline. And this brings us to what is arguably the ultimate paradigm shift in human health and recovery. For decades, we relied almost entirely on top-down therapy. We tried to use the logical, thinking neocortex to talk our way out of trauma, but we just learned that 80% of the information flows the other way. And on top of that, the neocortex goes completely offline during a threat. It's like trying to put out a fire in the basement by redecorating the attic. To truly heal, we have to use bottom-up therapy. We have to communicate through the body's actual physical sensations to reorganize those deep subcortical habits. We literally cannot think our way to safety. We have to feel our way there. Look at how this changes absolutely everything. What we typically call a cognitive narrative or a belief is actually just your brain trying to make sense of a biological state. If someone says, "I feel unsafe in this space," the somatic reality underneath that is sympathetic activation. Their heart rate is up, their muscles are braced. Or if someone says, "No one cares about me," that's actually dorsal vagal withdrawal. If you look at them, their spine is physically collapsing, they feel a visceral heaviness in their gut. To change the thought, we first have to fundamentally change the physiology. Honestly, this realization is profoundly empowering. It means your health isn't just a random lottery. It's the emergent result of these interconnected biological states. So, if the body truly keeps the score, and that score is currently derailing your sleep, your mood, and your cellular aging, how do we erase the biological debt? How do we finally hack into this hidden operating system and reprogram it for good? Section 3. Bottom-up biological reprogramming. We actually rewrite this biological debt through clinical somatology. These are precise neurological interventions designed to manually regulate the autonomic nervous system. One core principle here is something called pendulation. You see, true healing is never forced. It's this gentle, natural oscillation back and forth between physical discomfort and comfort. By breaking an overwhelming experience into tiny, digestible little pieces, a process called titration, your nervous system slowly learns that activation is temporary, and that prevents the exact kind of flooding that makes traditional talk therapy fail. Another incredibly powerful tool is somatic tracking. This is widely used to address neuroplastic pain, which is basically a false alarm. It's your brain completely misinterpreting a totally safe physical sensation as an active threat. Somatic tracking fixes this glitch. You start by isolating the physical sensation in your body, then you deliberately strip away the fear-based story you've attached to it, and you just observe the sensation neutrally, without any judgment. Every single time you track a moment of softening or ease in that tissue, you are capitalizing on neuroplasticity. You are literally rewiring your brain's alarm center back to a baseline of safety. Then we have a technique called Hana pandiculation, which targets the muscular armor itself. Trauma creates what we call sensory motor amnesia, where your muscles just stay chronically tight. This is exactly why your static stretching routines rarely work long-term. Instead, with pandiculation, you voluntarily contract a tight muscle slightly beyond its resting state. Then you slowly, mindfully lengthen that contraction and finally allow it to relax completely before pausing to integrate the change. This very deliberate sequence sends a volley of electrochemical impulses directly to your motor cortex, restoring your voluntary control and permanently resetting the muscle's resting length. Dr. Pat Ogden, who is an absolute pioneer of sensory motor psychotherapy, utilizes what she calls somatic resources to widen our window of tolerance for stress. These are tangible, physical actions. We're talking about actively grounding your feet firmly into the floor, intentionally aligning your spine to counter a dorsal vagal collapse, and engaging in regulated diaphragmatic breathing. But here is the absolute most crucial final step. You have to direct your mindfulness to savor that positive physiological shift for at least 15 seconds. Capitalizing on neuroplasticity requires time. Actively savoring that feeling of safety is what literally builds the new neural networks. And this right here is the vital takeaway that flips the traditional mental health model entirely on its head. By engaging in these body-based techniques, we are not bypassing emotional processing. We are doing the exact opposite. We are finally creating the underlying physiological conditions, that ventral vagal safety, that actually makes true emotional processing possible. Think about it. When your physical body finally feels biologically safe, all those rigid cognitive defenses naturally soften, and that is what allows for profound, lasting transformation.
Section 4. The interconnected biological future.
Now imagine what happens when we scale this understanding up. Once you realize that safety is biologically embedded in the nervous system, we can start re-engineering our entire societal structure. And we're already seeing the dawn of this with polyvagal-informed systems. Forward-thinking schools are implementing co-regulation breaks because, well, a regulated nervous system is literally required for cognitive capacity and learning. Workplaces are starting to foster congruent communication to actively mitigate burnout by reducing that chronic sympathetic activation. We're even utilizing trauma-informed sound and layouts in healthcare spaces to protect providers from compassion fatigue. We are intentionally designing the world to foster bottom-up safety.
Which reveals one incredibly profound truth. Your health is not just a collection of separate, disjointed habits or a list of isolated diagnoses. Health is the emergent result of countless, deeply interconnected biological processes occurring every single moment of every single day. Your trauma influences your nervous system. Your nervous system dictates your sleep architecture. Your deep sleep regulates your hormones. And those hormones control the systemic inflammation that silently drives aging and cognitive decline. It is one beautifully, deeply interconnected biological dance.
You now possess the blueprint. You understand the evolutionary circuits that are driving your behavior, the anatomical pathways that are physically storing your stress, and the precise biological tools required to completely reorganize your nervous system from the bottom up. The ultimate power lies directly in your own biology. So, knowing your body's hidden operating system, how are you going to rewrite the score it keeps today?